Hey, welcome to this video about killing fish. And don't worry, it's not going to be about pulling them out the riverbank and whacking them. Not very nice. It's not actually how you kill a fish. The way you kill a fish is you go into their house and you compliment them on what a great place they've got. Absolutely slays them every time, kills them. They're not very bright. Let's talk about killing fish in the poker context. So I use the word fish to get your attention, really. Not people necessarily like the word fish. Can be a bit derogatory. I mean weaker players in the game. The funny thing about weaker players in the game is as you move up the limits and get better, the nature of the fish, the nature of the bad players actually changes. So why do we want to talk about killing those players? Well, the great secret of poker is it doesn't matter what kind of poker you play, tournaments, cash, it doesn't matter. Most of your chips will come from bad players or players that are worse than you most of the time. Good friend of mine, the sit and go specialist Dan Morgan, once said to me, most players spend too much time working on the deep theory and marginal spots and advanced stuff and nowhere near enough time working on how to get more chips and finding different ways to get more chips out the weaker players. So that's where your money is going to come from in poker. That's how you're going to get in the winner's circle. That's how you're going to move up. So let's do some work on it right now. What are the keys to beating weaker players? Well, the first thing is to get beyond emotion. Get beyond emotion. So no emotion. Now this can be positive and negative. So the positive emotion you can have, which I suffered from for a long time when I played poker, is I know that they're not very good at poker. I'm so clever, I know loads about poker, I'm going to beat them. And that can be really harmful because it can make you force the action. It can get you into pots you're not supposed to be in. It can cause you to tilt when they win and so on. And then there's the negative emotion that we sometimes have where, we feel like we almost dismiss them. We maybe think that they are super weak. And then if they do happen to win a pot, we get very negative about it. Now, emotion doesn't really help us that much in poker. And no matter how frustrating it is to play against weaker players, if they are getting lucky or having one of those runs against you, it's not going to help you. In fact, it's almost certainly going to make you play worse. So you just want to see your weaker members of your table as, sure, a source for chips, a player that you're going to want to play more pots against, but not as some kind of entitlement to their chips, not as some kind of massive emotional deal where you must beat them. Because poker doesn't really work like that. We can't really control the spots that we're in. You have to let the cards and the game come to you to a certain extent. So try not to force it and try not to get upset when they win pots because it is going to happen. It's the nature of the game. This is not like a running race where if you're faster, you'll win every single race. That is just not the nature of playing weaker players at poker. It happens over time and it happens in small increments. So you've got to get rid of that emotion if you want to play well against them. Next up, we've been talking about them as a group, but that is not going to help you when you play poker. You've got to see them as individuals. See them as individuals. See as individuals. So what I mean by that is, it's very tempting to see someone play, they do something kind of odd or they call with a hand they shouldn't or whatever, and you just go, okay, they're a calling station. And you kind of dismiss them, right? You just see them as a calling station. That's not going to help you play. That's a fine first step. It's fine to kind of define a player until you get a more evolved picture of how they play. But that's not going to help you really win the maximum against them. What I want to get you away from is just having these set rules for how you play in any situation and be able to adapt to what you're doing. So you want to see them as individuals and think about them as an individual, the same as you do with every other player who's at the table. So you really want to kind of burrow down beyond the superficial, okay, they call too much, into, well, just how much will they call? You know, what kind of range are they going to the flop with? Are they giving up every flop? When they don't give up, what do they have? Like really get more specific about that player. Number 3 is going to help you do that. And this is a massive shift. And this can be a game changer, possibly the biggest thing you should take away from this video. You want to see the game through their eyes. See the game as they see it. So, game as they see it. As they see it. So, I think one of the biggest sources of frustration that good players like you have when you play a weak player is that you can't understand why they're doing things that they do, right? So you will probably have one view of poker, and no matter how much I tell you to kind of broaden your horizons and try different stuff or whatever, we're all human beings. We all have a kind of a fixed view of something that we do, especially something we love to do. And weak players won't fit into that mode of thinking. And they won't do the things that you've read in poker books and seen in instructional videos like this one and see on poker forums. They will do things that are not conventional. And that's one of the things that makes them poorer players, right? They're doing things that are, not what we accept to be good poker. But you can't get frustrated by that. And if you just see it like that and either dismiss them or get frustrated with them kind of calling with King 5 offsuit, that's not a way to beat them. Right? The way that you beat them and win the maximum from them is see the game as they see it. So when you see a player doing unorthodox things or you see a player who's weaker, ask yourself, how are they seeing the game? What are they trying to achieve when they make decisions? Now, maybe they're not really a thinking player, right? But you can still kind of ask yourself, why are they doing what they're doing? Even if it's as simple as, this player just thinks that he's lucky right now and he wants to get to the river. Or this player just likes to see the flop because otherwise, how do you know if you've won, right? It's important to see the game as they see it so that then you can start to exploit what they're doing and get a better read on them as an individual, because this is really about pushing edges and about finding chips against weaker players that other players won't. Because the big hands are going to take care of themselves, right? When you've got aces, you don't need me to tell you what to do. When your opponent calls you to the river with almost nothing and you've got a set, you don't need my help with that. But where you're going to make the difference in your poker career winning money from weak players is thinking about them more carefully and asking, what are the things that I can exploit? So that's number 4. Ask, what are their weaknesses? So the next step from seeing the game as they see it is to get specific about what they're doing. And the more specific you can get, the better you'll do. So it's absolutely fine to get to the point of this guy calls too much, or this guy gives up too easily, he's tight weak after the flop, or this guy's super tight, or this girl's super tight. That's absolutely fine. But you really want to burrow down into that and ask, okay, well, what does that actually mean in terms of their play, right? What does that actually mean in terms of their play? And then you really want to ask, okay, what does that mean in terms of their ranges in different spots? What does it mean in terms of their range of different spots? And get as specific as you possibly can about what their weaknesses actually are. Now, this is something that's going to build over time. You can make certain assumptions when you see certain things. If you see a player call all the way down, with King 5 offsuit and 5 is the third pair on board, you can assume that they're going to call a lot, right? You can get that information quite quickly. Some information, like are they capable of bluffing? Are they capable of making semi-bluffs? You might need to watch them and play with them a bit longer to get that. But the more weaknesses you can pinpoint, the more things there are for you to take advantage. Which brings us to number 5. And the question you need to ask yourself is, how can I turn those weaknesses into chips? So we want to take their weaknesses and turn them into chips. And this is really the makings of a game plan. Really what we're asking here is, how are you going to adjust your normal game to take advantage of this weaker player and really get maximum chips from them? So to give you a simple example, if a player calls too much, okay, well the weakness is they call too much. Well, how am I going to turn that into chips? I'm going to bet more when I have the best hand. So not only am I going to value bet them more, bet them when think I've got the best hand, when I'm ahead of their range, whatever. But I'm also going to experiment with how far I can push that. How much are they actually going to call? Can I get value when I have, second pair with a moderate kicker because they're calling with ace high or whatever? And then you can push, well, can I bet bigger? If they were going to call 100 with this hand, will they actually call 500? Will they actually call 6 times the pot? So what we're trying to do here is not only identify the weakness of the weaker player, but then ask, how can I turn it into chips? What's the basis of a game plan for doing that? And that leads us on to the next one. So it all flows. It's all on the script. And that is to be flexible. Be flexible. So what I'm driving at with this is, if you play 1,000 hours against a weaker player than you, you will win chips, right? Because by definition, they're weaker than you, they're making worse decisions. So yes, they'll get lucky sometimes. As long as that isn't too frustrating and you don't tilt over time, you're going to make chips. But what we're really after is making maximum chips. This video is not called lightly tickling fish. This video is called killing fish, right? We want to make as many chips as often as we possibly can. So you really want to be flexible in your approach. To give you an example of what I just talked about, a player called Sam Razavi, who we did a live tournament course with, he has a tremendous record in live tournaments. And one of the things that he does is he will value bet 3 or 4 times the pot in the early stages of a tournament against a weak calling station player, because that player has got, you know, starting chips, 20,000 chips in front of them, so they can afford it, and they're just thinking in binary, do I call or fold? Now that is something that you won't find in too many poker instructional books or videos or theory, because, you know, what they tend to do is standardize all of their advice, which is fine, it's not wrong. But if you want to win the maximum, you want to be flexible in what you're doing, right? With your bluffs against tight players and tight weak players, and your semi-bluffs, with your value bets against calling station players, with what hands you play pre-flop, and so on and so on. So try and be flexible. And then last of all, you've got to be persistent. Be persistent. I love the word persistent when it comes to poker. Be persistent. People use the word patience with poker a lot, and you do need patience to find the right spots and so on. But I love the word persistent because that encompasses everything you're trying to do and committing to the right actions. So what I mean by that is you want to understand what the right way to exploit a player is, but then be committed to it whether it works the first time or not, right? So even when you value bet somebody with top pair, and they call all the way and they hit the miracle 2-pair on the river, I'm sure you've had it happen to you, and you go, I can't believe he played that hand, I can't believe he stayed that long, I can't believe I've lost, right? You put all that to one side and you go back to the same questions we've been asking. What's the best way to beat that player? Well, that hasn't changed. Just because you've got unlucky in one hand, the best way to make chips from that player has not changed. So you've got to be persistent, you've got to be tough. Remember, in poker, your winnings and your edge play out over time, right? They don't play out immediately. You don't get any instant gratification. But if you keep doing the right things, you can result in a lot of, you know, a lot of progress, a lot of results, a lot of chips, whatever. That will magically come, but only if you're persistent with what you're doing. So remember, the weaker players in the game are your best friends, right? They have to win sometimes, otherwise they wouldn't play. That's just the nature of poker, right? And sometimes they're going to win pots from you, but you can't be frustrated by that because it is part of the game. Your opportunity is to play poker in no matter what form you like against these players and to win chips against them over time. You've got to be persistent to do that. You've got to take into account all the other things I've talked about. All right, I really hope that's given you value. Go out, go get them, go get those weak puppies because they are your biggest source of chips in poker and they always will be. If you've liked this video, give it a Facebook like. You can also share it on Facebook and other social media, and please do leave me a comment under the video. I always love to hear what you think. If you've got any questions or anything you're struggling with in this area or anything else with poker, I'd love to hear from you down below the video. All right, take it easy, have fun being up on the flappy fishy fellas and ladies, and I'll talk to you in another video.